What happens when your driver or your passengers don't speak the same language as you? How do you get beyond that? Find out on today's episode. Hey everyone, Chris here from Realridesharestories. On this channel we do a lot of different things within the rideshare industry, so if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. But before we get started, if you have a crazy Uber Lyft experience, whether you're a passenger or a driver, record it, send it my way, and maybe we can feature you on the channel. Alright, so Uber and Lyft, they pair passengers and drivers randomly, whoever's kind of the closest, whoever's next in line, depending on where it is and what's going on. But there's a strong possibility that at some point in a rideshare career or a rideshare ride, whatever side you're on, you might be paired with somebody, whether they're a driver or a passenger, who does not speak the same language as you. So what do you do to overcome that, especially if you really need to communicate real pertinent information to either the driver or the passenger? What do you do to get beyond that language barrier? It's a real simple fix. But first, this inspiration came to me from the form of a Facebook post that was posted on a page that I follow and I'm part of. And it was basically an elderly woman who was using Uber Lyft as a service to get around from store to store and then back home, which that's a very common thing. There's a lot of elderly that use this service because when they can't drive, they don't want to be a burden on the friends, family, relatives, whatever it might be. So they're able to use this service and it's cheap and good for them. But yeah, one of the big things is they take it to stores, they take it to doctor's office, and sometimes they don't speak English, whether they're elderly or not. But in this case, it was an elderly woman who did not speak English and wanted to go to two stores, spending a pretty good amount of time there. I believe 45 minutes at one store and then like an hour or so at another store. And as a rideshare driver, if you are a driver, you know, sitting there waiting for 45 minutes in one spot and then an hour in another spot makes you no money, because we don't get paid for time, we get paid for driving. Time is calculated with driving, but I mean, what is it, like 10, 12 cents? I don't even remember what the breakdown is because it's that little. So time is not a lot. Like when you make stops, it's only a few minutes. That's what it's designed for. It's not designed to be your personal chauffeur for the day. And in this case, it was the language barrier that was causing problems because the elderly woman didn't understand how the service truly worked, and the driver wasn't effectively communicating or able to effectively communicate because they didn't speak, the passenger didn't speak English. So that's kind of the background about this. But one of the easiest things that you can do as a driver or a passenger, if you're wherever you are in the country, you know, visiting somewhere, whatever it is, download Google Translate. It's the easiest app that you can download, and you can either type things in so they can read it if they're hard of hearing, elderly, whatever it might be. You can even use Zoom functions so they can see it better. Or there's audio feedback where it can play the audio so that person can understand what you're trying to tell them. Well, again, whether they're driver or passenger. So let's go through a couple of scenarios real quick. First, if you're a passenger and let's just say you're visiting another country and you don't really speak that language and you're trying to tell them a certain type of information that they need. You know, again, Google Translate. You type in what you need to do in the language they speak. You press the audio button. Hey, guess what? It spits out the audio. Now that driver knows exactly what you need or whatever it is. And then they can communicate back with you via Google Translate as well, too. And then same thing. Now, I'm a driver. I live in the Buffalo, Niagara Falls region. Niagara Falls is one of the top tourist spots for all of the world. So we get a lot of people from several areas of the country not just in our country, but of the world. So we get several countries from the world coming in. We also have a very large campus, which has a high population of students that are studying from other countries. So when we come in, or when they come into my car, there's a lot of times where I actually am speaking English. I know a little bit of Spanish, but not much, enough to get me by and to communicate with people who speak Spanish. But I don't know Asian, I don't know Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, I don't know French, I don't know these different languages. And I've had people come in where they knew a little bit of English, enough to get them by as well too, to give that communication. So that's kind of the same thing. But nobody really uses Google Translate, even though it's a really good tool. Now, in this case, I could have started using Google Translate to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. But again, they knew just a little bit of English, enough to get them by. And then other times, maybe there were people in the car that nobody spoke English except for one person, and they were kind of the liaison between the people in the car if they needed something to portray it to me, because they knew English a little better. But yeah, if you don't have that liaison or that ability to portray certain language enough to get by, Google Translate is going to be your best option there, because you can translate it into many different languages, many common languages where something that is said can be understood by that other person. So yes, if you don't have Google Translate download it for both if you're a passenger and a driver, just in case something happens where you're in a circumstance, whether you have a driver or a passenger who does not speak the same language as you, and you still need to portray that certain information. So going back to that story that was an inspiration for this video, yeah, using Google Translate would have probably helped quite a bit. And unfortunately, I don't know if this driver knew that or not, but they tried doing what they could to help, at least when I was reading through the comments, so I don't want people to blast that. But yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. And again, if somebody isn't understanding a certain concept due to, their inability to understand the app, maybe because they're older or maybe because they don't speak English and they don't understand it fully, it can place a major strain on the ride itself. But again, if you're using Google Translate, you can alleviate that a lot, because now you have an effective form of communication that is good for both parties or both groups to be able to communicate and get their point across. So again, if you haven't downloaded Google Translate yet, highly recommend to download it. And then if you don't get any rides where you don't have that, there's a high possibility, though, at some point you may have that, no matter where you are, because there are people coming in and out. So with that being said, that's the end of today's video. If you guys had any issues at some point, whether you were driving or being a passenger, and the opposite person did not speak the same language, and what happened, comment below if you got a good story about it. Did you use Google Translate? Were you able to get by just enough? What happened? Comment below, because I'd love to hear what you guys have to say or had in experiences. But with that being said, that's the end. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications so you'll be notified every time a new video is uploaded. And as always, never drink and drive, always tip your drivers, and we'll see you next time.